we've had a full morning talking about the impediments to everyone recognizing the ERA as the 28th Amendment. In so many respects, or in every respect, the Equal Rights Amendment has met the constitutional requirements for being the 28th Amendment, but not everyone agrees. And so you, as co-founder and co-chair of the ERA caucus in Congress, have been taking some measures, trying to move through Congress several different legislative ways of ameliorating some of those objections.
Yes.
So talk to us a little bit about what your strategy is to get the ERA finally finished.
So
Here,
there we go. Got it. All right. So first of all, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you all for waiting. We had chaos on the floor, but it's Congress. You know, I remember in 2020, this is 2022, December 2029, December 2022, just thinking about what happens next with the ERA. Carolyn Maloney was about to leave Congress, along with Jackie Speer, both of them carrying ERA legislation, and just figuring out what's next. How do we keep this going? And I had multiple conversations with Carolyn Maloney, and just decided, you know what? We have to be able to organize within Congress. And I couldn't find a way where we could, people who care about the ERA, where we could come together to really like mobilize within Congress. And so I just said, you know what? I have not heard anyone talk about a caucus for the ERA, but the only way to have one is to start one. And so Representative Pressley and I, we talked about, getting this going, because for us, it can't be just the same folks. Hey, it can't just be the same folks saying the same thing, beating the same drum all the time. We need to open it up to more folks. We need to see people from different districts who have, a different set of issues than what we have, but the ERA would affect people in everyone's district. So we understand that the top issues may be different, but that what the ERA would do for people in everyone's district, we need people to see that. The other thing is this, for those that don't know, which I think this will be a joke, but if we don't put the information a lot of times right in front of members of Congress, then they won't have that information. It's not, you don't have a lot of time to go do this deep research on something that is always evolving. And so for us, we said, okay, not only will we put together this caucus, we want this to be a way for people to have the information, not only about what's happening federally, but in their own states and then in your neighboring states, because we think that is important as well. And so that's what we did. And so we felt like if we give people the House, so we give it a home, but then we also give you all the information. You don't have to do any homework, but then you get to take this and you get to go to your districts and you get to talk about it. Not only your districts, your state, you get to go and talk about the ERA and what's happening. Then you can work the ground in your local areas. And so that was the first thing. But then also the multiple vehicles. So Rep. Pressley has her legislation and discharge petition. Actually, her legislation is about the deadline. This deadline that should not be in place. And so we support that legislation. We're both supporting each other's legislation. My legislation says that the ERA is already the 28th Amendment. And we just need the Archivist of the United States, Colleen Shogan. We just need her to certify and publish it as such. And we have had that conversation with her, and we will keep having those conversations.
Well, I think a belt and suspender strategy is a good one, where both of those measures pass, and what we create are a series of political facts that make it undeniable that the ERA is the 28th Amendment. Why is it still important that we're fighting for this?
Because we breathe, because we still exist. So that's why we have to keep fighting for it. And so I'm glad that we have these two ways to be able to get at it, because the thing is, if one is going fast, then we need to be on that train and have the other one ready in case that one doesn't work, and vice versa. But we when we talk about the ERA, I'll say this. I, through the years, never really talked about the ERA, looked into the ERA, researched it, cared much about it through the years. And particularly, one, because I thought it was done. I just thought, like, if there was no conversations about this in my local community, no one was talking about the ERA, but also we were fighting police brutality in St. Louis, I was trying to keep my son alive, from being murdered by the police, which is a big deal. I was trying to keep my lights on. I was trying to, survive and, thrive as a single parent. So I just wasn't, it just wasn't on my mind. And because it wasn't being, thrown at me through the media or social media, in church or anywhere, it just wasn't a thing. But once, through organizing, just hearing about, through protests and activism, movement, organizing, and just realizing, how, intersectional so many of our issues are. And then I entered Congress and we started to talk about the ERA. And I realized that so many of the things I was fighting for came up under this one umbrella. It's like we're, fighting, against this gender wage gap, over and over. We're always talking about it. I remember when I was running for office, I actually had the formula. I would tell people, like, hey, if you are a Black woman, if you are Latina, if you are like, and I would give the formula. And I had a poster with my formula showing that $20,000, I made $20,000 less than my white male counterparts doing the exact same job a year. And I was like, so in 5 years, how much money am I losing just because I am a woman? And so, but so whether it's gender wage gap, whether it's housing discrimination, reproductive freedom, we were trying to get reproductive justice. We thought we had the freedom. We were trying to work towards the justice, and now we don't even have that. So we don't have freedom nor justice right now. And so healthcare, violence against women, all of those things, so much of it is housed under there. Trans rights. That's why it's still important, because we don't have that. And women, the word women is not even in the Constitution. But this, to enshrine gender equality in the Constitution, is a now thing. And we want to right the wrong that all of the wrongs that happened before, even though we can't clear what happened through history, we can change what happens now.
Now look who's
There's
joining.
my sister in service.
Thank you. Representative Ayanna Pressley, also the co-founder and co-chair of the ERA caucus in Congress. Thank you so much for joining us. Yes, thank you so much. We're talking about why we need the ERA. And I guess I would ask you, why did you take this up as something that was one of the key issues that you wanted to work on in Congress, so much so that you wanted to create a new caucus to organize that work around?
Thank you all again for the invitation to join you, and always good to. All right,
There we go.
always good to be in movement work and to share a dais with my sister in service here, one of my favorite truth tellers and justice seekers. I would say, I'm sure Cori might have already alluded to this, but in the name of transparency, I'll just say, I was not someone who for a very long time saw the ERA as a movement that could be home to me. And that has everything to do with the storied history, of the movement. And I do have to thank Congresswoman Spear and Maloney, respectively. We thank them for their stewardship and their indefatigable leadership to advance the ERA for many years. And when they both retired, they respectively went to each of us and asked us to take this on. Which I think that makes such an important statement, that representing multiple marginalized identities. I mean, to be a marginalized or oppressed person means that you have to litigate, legislate, agitate, mobilize for those things that are a birthright for everyone else. And given against the backdrop of draconian, anti-woman, anti-LGBTQ, xenophobic, coordinated efforts from state legislatures all the way to the Supreme Court, who have been enlisted as co-conspirators and accomplices in the absence of justice, at this moment really saw the ERA as part of that solution. And what I wanted, since we have to be more inclusive and intersectional in our movement building, because that's how the lives people actually live are intersectional, saw this as an opportunity. I want people, if you care about domestic violence, gender-based violence, then you should care about the ERA. If you care about the racial wealth gap, which is a $10 trillion crisis, that's not just a problem for Black folks, it's a problem for everybody. And you care about the racial wealth gap, the gender wage gap, and any other number of inequities and injustices that girls and women in this country have made a conflated part and normalized part of our condition in this country, you should see the ERA. And especially given these attacks on our bodily autonomy and freedom, the prospect of a national march towards forced birth, which is all an abortion ban is. And we know who stands to be disparately impacted by that. So I'm here and shoulder to shoulder and my sister in this fight because this is the time, and because, in my opinion, the women of this country have done their part. Activists have certainly done their part. States have done their part. Now Congress must do theirs. And if we already had gender equality enshrined in the Constitution, I mean, how demoralizing that we're even saying that 100+ years in, that is even still a fight. Maybe the Supreme Court would not move with such callousness and recklessness in the overturning of things like Roe, because we would have those legal protections.
You know, I come from the ERA project at Columbia Law School, and we did a report about a year ago that we call the equality gap, that to the extent the existing sex discrimination laws that we have, and there are many, have benefited anyone, it's been white women. And women of color have not been, really, they have not been benefited much at all by Title VII, the Equal Pay Act, all of the robust anti-discrimination infrastructure that we have. So what the ERA could do is allow Congress, or if not command Congress, to strengthen those measures, but also take up new stuff. You were talking about your son being profiled, and I worked on stop and frisk, challenging it in New York City, and it was Black and brown men being profiled because they were of their race, but also because of their gender, right? That they were necessarily dangerous. And so men could also be the beneficiaries of an ERA, not just women. So what are your dreams? Not just that we enforce the existing laws better, but what are new ways that we might imagine gender-based justice in an intersectional way with an ERA? This is like a law school final exam. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I was just wanted to check with her because I had been talking a lot.
That's how women do. Shine theory. We really want to ensure an equality of voice. So I love my male colleagues, but I don't know how many of them would have said, "Do you want to go?" So, anyway, go ahead, sis.
I've been speaking, I answered quite a few questions, so I want to shine the light on my sister in this emerald green over here. Yes, ERA green. Well, my dream would be where everything that we're calling for, everything that is up under the umbrella of the ERA, so the things that my sister just spoke about, so what it looks like to have equality in education, to the point to where we don't have the disparities when we talk about the disparity between Black and white women enrolling in four-year colleges, creating a pipeline where Black girls, like there is a special program for Black girls to be able to, to be able to maneuver the things that they have to maneuver that are different to be able to end up in to be able to apply and then end up and be successful in a four-year college. I would love to see a world where we don't have to wonder about if this state can deal with abortion differently than this state, where we're not saying yay for Nevada, but then we know what's happening in my state in Missouri, where our trans community, where we don't have parents and children reaching out saying, hey, I'm going to have to move out of this state because of the attacks that are coming to my child and because of what the state legislature is doing. My dream is that the federal government says, we got this, and we are going to make this decision for the entire country because it's just right, because every single person deserves their basic freedom and liberty about their own body, but also their own choices. And so to know that, like you said, the ERA being that anchor to not only improve bills that are already on the books, to create better bills, to make sure that that we are. One thing that I've seen Congress do, and I know my sister can speak to this too, is we have all of these folks thinking that they're doing great things, and so we write these bills. But if you haven't been through it, or if you haven't, that's how we miss so many marginalized folks or communities, because we have people that think that they're doing a good job and they're not, because we're not directly working with or talking to those most directly impacted. So those types of bills that actually work for and help people who've actually gone through it. So how does housing discrimination legislation, how does that actually work for somebody who has been unhoused, or somebody who has 6 kids and can't move into a 2-bedroom, how does that legislation work for those folks? So that would be my dream, that we don't even talk about the ERA anymore, because we have it and it's working so well.
I'll co-sign that. Again, just in the spirit of transparency, let me just say that sometimes when you're prompted with a question of sort of what is the dream, it is harder to answer because we are in the mud and the muck right now, where daily our job is really the work of harm reduction and mitigation. And, those aren't the things that earn newspaper headlines or that we can put in a press release to the outside world. And it's fair, as our shared constituencies, you're focused on what are we advancing. But given the current climate of which we're governing, there are many things that we stop that you'll never know. And so sometimes in the midst of governing under such extreme circumstances. I mean, I've been in Congress 5 years, and unprecedented is the word du jour. I'm looking forward to some precedented times because everything has been unprecedented. We have been navigating these layered crises for so long. And so it can be hard to see the forest for the trees. But it is important that we have those North Stars. And something that, my sisters and I often talk with them about is just, Dr. King in that historic speech on the March for Jobs and Freedom, that there are so many things he could have lifted in that moment. But when Mahalia Jackson said, tell them about the dream, it's so important that we not lose sight of that we be able to articulate the dream. And so my sister did that very, very effectively there. So the only other thing that I could really add is I just want for everyone to see an investment in each other's freedoms and destinies and really center our shared humanity. I would like for everyone to see the work of the Crown Act to ban race-based hair discrimination as their problem too. I would like for everyone to care about the push-out crisis and the disparate criminalization of Black and brown children in our schools simply just for how they show up, for everyone to feel invested in that, in the Black maternal morbidity crisis, in the criminalization of migrants. I mean, and I could go on. I think if we don't see, if we're not invested in in centering our shared humanity, you're gonna have lawmakers who will play you. And the way in which they'll play you is that they will single issue you and they'll silo you. And so they'll come to Black folks and only talk about mass incarceration, which we care greatly about. But we also care about Black entrepreneurship and Black wealth and Black joy. They'll come to women and only talk about reproductive rights, which right now that needs to be so much of everything. But before the Dobbs decision, before Roe was overturned, I mean, I've always seen Roe as the floor and not the ceiling. But moreover, you can't only come to women and say that they're the only ones that should care about bodily autonomy, but then also not talk to women about childcare and paid leave and the gender wage gap and care economy and all of those things. You can't go to our Latino siblings and only talk to them about immigration reform because these unjust immigration laws have a disparate impact on the AAPI community, in particular the South Asian community in my district, Haitian, African migrants. And moreover, my Latino siblings, also care about small business and entrepreneurship and housing, right? And I'm not even going to say, and you can't go to the AAPI community because they don't even usually go to the AAPI community. The AAPI community is, some would characterize as the model, minority, but they're really the invisible one. And then finally, they'll go to the LGBTQ community. I'm from Massachusetts, and so we made great strides in healthcare reform and marriage equality. But many people walked away from the movement after marriage equality, when housing discrimination, employment discrimination, healthcare discrimination was still rampant. So we all have to be invested in our collective humanity, and our shared struggles. Because if you're not, you will have lawmakers that will play you. They will single issue you, and they will not build staffs, and they will not advance policies that see the totality of who you are and the lives that we lead.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being here. I run a Center on Congressional Studies. I teach about legislation. I worked for a guy named Biden when he was a senator. And I just want to say that I appreciate very much your resistance and how hard it is to do what you do. But a lot of my students don't have a lot of hope. They are very negative about our institutions. And so I see the ERA movement as a democracy movement, as taking back our Constitution. We are a majority. This is a majority movement. And so I think that just want you to comment on that. And what do you say to young people in your districts, or my students, or Catherine's students at Columbia?
First of all, there is no person who comes to ordain you to say, like, this is what you're supposed to do. This is your movement to take up. This is your work. There's no activist guru, that anoints you. It's just making a decision that this affects me, or this affects somebody that I care about. This affects something. I just feel passionate about this. And so I'm going to use whatever tools I have to be able to help add to, this movement moving, or and there's no age on that. There is just passion. There is just need. When we think about what I can bring, what you can bring is whatever you have. I used to tell people, well, I still believe it, but I would tell people when they would say, oh, well, what can I do for you? How can I help? And I would say, look, they say, oh, I can't knock doors, or I can't do those things, but what else can I do? And I would say, if you tie shoes well, tie shoes, because at some point when I'm out knocking doors, my shoes may become untied. Everybody has a place. I don't care if you collect stamps. We'll find something for you, but bringing your thing to the table is important. And when I think about folks like Generation Ratify,
There's a bunch.
when I think about Generation Ratify, these
So
amazing.
y'all know she wasn't pandering because she didn't even see you.
No, I didn't even see you.
So that love is genuine. It's public and private.
Yes, I love them. But the passion, just like that, the passion that they bring to this movement. The thing is, we need all of us, because there are folks who are our elders. There are folks who are our elders who have knowledge that we don't have, and have understanding and understand certain dynamics that we don't. But then there are those of us that are coming in, like for us, as my sister started to was alluding to, and I started to, but I didn't get to it. I came into this movement, but it was just so late for me, because I just saw it as a white women's movement. Once I even got to Congress, it was like, well, this is something that white women work on. But it doesn't, like, there's no room for Black women in this area. They don't want to hear from Black women in the area of in the work of the ERA.
This is why I love her, because I allude and she states. That's our dynamic. Thank you.
It's just we go back and forth. But but when I think about what Generation Ratify is doing, they said that we're not waiting on anybody else to do for us what we can do for ourselves. What they said was, but we also understand that we shouldn't do this alone in a silo, and because we've seen that happen before, and we didn't get what we needed because people were working in silos oftentimes, and that's in so many movements. And so them being able to work with everyone, but not only that, they didn't just work with activists. They didn't just work with scholars. They said, we want to work with lawmakers too, and so that's the thing. So for your folks, letting them know, right now is your time. Right now, they're stripping away our rights. Right now, they're throwing everything that they can. Right now, they're imagining how far they can go, but then they're also trying to do it. And so what do you bring to this movement? Because when we look back, when the history books start to talk about in 30 years, who did what during this time? How did we get here? What will you say to your grandchildren? What will you say to those that come up after you? What will you say? You say what you did, and hopefully that is a lot.
Here. Yeah, hope. When I was talking about giving ourselves permission to dream, and then articulating that dream and passing it on, because I think it's important as movement builders that we not only trauma bond. It is so important that we are articulating, naming, manifesting, laboring for the dream, and a platform that's about advancing hope. That is not hokey. That's not corny. I think there are plenty of people who motivate with fear, and we want to motivate with hope. I talk often about the fact how, as women of color, as Black women, that we are scolded for expressing anger. We're always being talked out of our rage. And we can feel the pressure to comport ourselves in a way that does not fully surrender to that. But know that our righteous rage and indignation in the face of injustice is rooted in radical love. It's rooted in radical love and hope. It's a movement that is fueled by hope. So what I would say to your students is, hope is a discipline. I'm an Aquarius, so I love a good affirmation, and I love poetry. And one of my closest siblings in the movement, Brittany Packnett Cunningham, during the pandemic, gave me an affirmation, which is, I choose the discipline of hope over the ease of cynicism. I choose the discipline of hope over the ease of cynicism, and I choose fortitude over fatalism. I choose fortitude over fatalism, and I say that every day. So hope is a discipline, and know that each and every one of you, and certainly our dedicated team members, I just want to give it up to Team Pressley and Team Bush. We could not do any of this without their brilliance, without their personal sacrifice, without their support. So they make it easier for us to practice the discipline of hope. And then finally, I want to lift up something that I've been saying everywhere I go, and I hope it's okay if I'm partisan for a moment. You know, we are winning. Like, the goal of white supremacy and the patriarchy is to lead you to believe that we are losing and that you are alone. But this movement is growing. Look at things like, if you take like my federal bill with Cori Booker on baby bonds, we haven't passed it federally, but that's a national movement. Look at something like the Crown Act. We haven't passed that federally as of yet, but there's a nationwide movement on Crown Act. Look at things like universal basic income. Look at things like student debt cancellation, which they tried to fringe and marginalize. And here we stand today with already, 4 million borrowers who have benefited from targeted relief to the tune of over $130 billion, and 30 more million borrowers are about to benefit. That was a policy that people said would be regressive in impact. They said the president didn't have authority to do anything. This is now an issue that Democrats are running on, that they used to laugh at progressives about. Abortion access. Do you know how many Democrats used to even be afraid to say the word abortion? They would say, maybe if you were lucky, reproductive justice. That wasn't an issue that Democrats ran on. So I just want to say the progressive movement, which is fueled by young people, we are winning. Look at unionization happening throughout this country. So they would lead you to believe that we are losing, but we are winning. The Congressional Progressive Caucus in the House of Representatives right now is the largest ideological caucus in Congress. When I came in the 116th Congress, we were about 70 members. Now we're over 100. So the country, now you might be shocked by that, but they keep electing progressives. Now, I want to just be transparent about this. My very first campaign, a consultant had made up a lit piece that said, vote for Pressley, the only progressive in the race. And I said, oh, you can't use that lit piece, because I thought that wasn't a term that belonged to Black candidates. I was like, I don't hug trees. That's not for me. I didn't even know I was an environmentalist. Now I hug trees, okay? In the legislative lorax, okay? In the fight for tree canopies, equity. But how I ultimately was able to take on that character is that I said the progressive movement is just the civil rights movement. What were those freedom riders and fighters doing? They were disrupting the status quo, right? So I just say all that to say the progressive movement is the civil rights movement. We are still in it. And so please continue to practice the discipline of hope and know that this movement is winning and you are not alone.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. We've only got about 1 more minute. Final remarks?
First of all, let me just say thank you for hosting this forum. And because we're really, really trying to help folks see why this should be important to all of us, because it's going to take us galvanizing just all across the country to really, really get those that have the power to make the ERA actually the 28th Amendment in the Constitution a reality. And we know as folks that are in movement that, policymakers and leaders don't have to move without pressure. Oftentimes they just won't. But with pressure, all of the things that my sister just named, from unionization and just on down the line, repro freedom, it is because of the pressure. And so continue, like, dig into the ERA even the more, seeing how you can do that work, not only here, but even in your local communities where you're from, how you can connect with groups like Generation Ratify and others, because this is what we need. It makes our job in Congress so much easier. Not that we're trying to have an easy job, but everything is hard. But to be able to say, the people want this. Like, everybody wants this. The people want this. And let us show you by, us showing all of the events and showing all of the work, the activism and all of that happening. Like, that is how we'll do it. But also understand that, states have been pushing forward. States have been able to show why an ERA is needed. And so, like I brought up Nevada, earlier, even though we don't have the federal ERA, but states that have said, well, we'll go ahead and do it ourselves, even though it shouldn't be on the states, but states saying we'll go ahead and do it has been a vehicle also that we can use to say, see, look, this is how we were able to protect abortion access because there was a state ERA in place. So we want to also keep that in mind. It absolutely is a tool. And so I'll lastly say that the caucus that my sister and I started, we may not be the largest caucus in Congress, but I think we may be the fastest growing. We are 50 something. What are we, Kate? We're over 50 members of U.S. House members that are a part of this caucus, and we are only 1 year old. So, so a lot of that is because of the work that people are doing in the community. So thank you all for pushing for the ERA.
Yes. Yes. And I thank this one for the visionary leadership to say that we needed to have an ERA caucus.
Thanks for saying yes.
It's never hard to say yes to you. I know whatever table you sit at, change is on the way. But this caucus is so important for momentum and also for educational awareness, because we are shocked by the number of people that believe gender equality is already enshrined in our Constitution. They just assume it, right? So I'm going to give some calls to action. All right, y'all got your phones out? Or for those of you that are 50 like me, you got paper? Okay. So first thing is, I love paper still. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Our staffs are like, please, no more paper. Okay. So ask your member of Congress to, if they have not already, to join the ERA caucus. Secondly, ask them if they are on any legislation that serves to advance the Equal Rights Amendment. And we have been exhaustive as legislators, I like to say, because the women of this country are exhausted. So whether it's legislation for the archivists to make this real, or it's legislation to do away with the arbitrary deadline, or whether it's signing the discharge petition that is at the desk, that we are, almost at that magic number. And in the 1970s, that was how a vote was brought, was by a discharge petition. So again, I would just say on this, although it has taken us 101 years too long, that we do have more momentum right now than we have had in probably 40 years. We did get a hearing in the Senate under Dick Durbin. We do have male allies, and we had 2 Republican allies in Senator McCarskey and Oscar Collins. So we're grateful to Senator Durbin, Senator Cardin, all of our Senate allies in this movement. But that is my call to action. Call the question. For those that are not supportive of this, it's because they think it's already happened, or they're just busy. I mean, at any given time in Congress, there can be 12,000 active pieces of legislation. So just call the question of your member, encourage them to join the ERA caucus, make sure they know that matters to you, and ask them to be supportive of our legislative and mobilization efforts. Thank you.
Let them know we'll do the heavy lift, like she said, the education component. We'll do the heavy lift. We'll make sure they get the information. Our teams work at that, but they're great. So we'll do that part. We'll make it easy for them.
We cannot thank you enough for the leadership, the energy, the brilliance, the heart you've brought to this struggle. You were the room full of advocates who were here to back you up, to give you the arguments you need, to get the bodies on the line. Thank you so much for being in partnership in this struggle and for all you're doing. We're going to let you go back to the other things you were doing before you came over here. But thank you so much for giving us your time today.